Okay, I'm just going to be doing some of your homework questions in this video and explaining a little bit more in depth as I go. Okay, so this first question, it's asking if these two are a solution to this one or this one or this one. And if you notice, each one of them, the symbol is the only thing that has changed. Okay, you don't need to know what the graph looks like in order to do this, but I'm going to show you anyway. Okay, that's basically what it looks like. It's not a nice graph by any means, but you get the idea for what I'm going to be saying. Okay, so we want to know if -6, -8 is a solution to all of these. -6, -8 is not even on this graph, and that's not what I'm trying to get at. Okay, part of it is I want to use, here's -6 and -8, so it would be down here. Okay, um, I want to use the graph that you're given in Canvas, which is a 5 by 5. Okay, so, well, they call it a 5 by 5 because it goes in 5 up, 5 down, 5 left, 5 right, but it's more than that, right? Okay, so here we go. What this is saying is, does this point make this inequality true? Okay, so what we're going to do is start with the inequality. Technical difficulty, sorry. Okay, start with the inequality, but we're going to leave the x and the y blank. And then we're going to plug in the x value and the y value in their appropriate places and see if it works. Okay, so order of operations, you get 60 plus -48, and that gives you 12. Okay, so this one's asking, is 12 less than -4? And it is false. Okay, so what that means is when I graph this equation as this line, and now I need to make it an inequality. Whoops, remember I told you that if you forgot to do the dots, you could, whoa, that's not what I wanted. You could train track it. Okay, I actually have the technology to do that. But what it's saying is that this point doesn't fall in the shaded section of this inequality. I haven't shaded it because each one of these is different shading. Okay, so this particular one up here would be like this. And I will get into how to do that on another problem. But what this is saying then is the point -6, -8, and what did I tell you? It was somewhere around here. Okay, if I were to continue this out here, that point right here would not be in the shaded section, and you can see it isn't. Okay, so all you need to do for each one of these is to plug in this point, and you got that point because it gave it to you here, and see if it's true or false. If it's false, it is not a solution. If it is true, then it is a solution. Okay, being a solution means that the point is in the shaded section. Okay, but we're not going to shade it until next. This one you're just substituting. And this is one we're going to shade. Okay, so and I'm doing them out of order, you noticed. I decided to do them easiest to hardest rather than in the order that they have given them to you. Okay, so if you want to jump around, you're more than welcome to. But this video is kind of going to go in my order instead of theirs. Okay, what you want to do first is graph the equation. And I know it's an inequality, but you're going to change it to an equation. Instead of having a greater than sign, you're going to graph it with an equal sign. Okay, so you know the slope is right here. Slope is 1. and the y-intercept is right here. So slope, or b rather, is -1. So we're going to start at -1. We're going to make the slope into a fraction. If it's a whole number, you make it into a fraction by putting it over 1. Every single time it's over 1. Okay, so we're going to, rise 1 and run 1, both positive. So we're going to go up 1, over 1. There's my new dot. Okay. Graphing this one, at this point, you have to use the line that they're asking you to use. And you figure that out by whatever this symbol is. And you have 4 symbols to choose from. And each one does something a little bit different to your graph. Okay? So you have these 2 and you have these 2. Whoops. I don't know why I did them that way, but there we go. Okay? So these 2 here are dotted lines. And these over here are solid lines. Okay, so using that information now, we're going to graph the line. So this particular one is going to be a dotted line, right? So I'm going to put that over here. Graph using a dotted line. And that one is going to be particular to the question. Not every time. It will be particular to whatever that symbol is. Okay, so dotted line it is. Here we go. Okay, when you do it on Canvas, you're going to pick the dotted line, and you see how there's 3 red dots? You choose 2 points first. So you would choose 1 point, choose the other point, either order. And if you've chosen the dotted line, it will automatically put your dotted line in once it sees the second point. When you click it, it will lock it in. Okay, this third point over here is to tell which side to shade. And that's our next part. Okay, so I'll show you that in just a sec. So our next step is to determine which side to shade. Okay, and that's where we check a point. We did that in class, and some of you were quite confused. So let's take a look at that a little bit closer. Okay, first thing you need to do is choose a point that is not on the line. If you choose it on the line, that doesn't help you determine whether to shade above or below it. If it's right on it, it's neither. Okay, so you want to choose a point that's in this top half or in this bottom half, and it can be anything. Okay, you could pick that one, you could pick this one, you could even do fractions if you wanted to, but although I wouldn't suggest that. Okay, so you choose any point. I have a tendency of using 0, 0 if it's not on the line. So I'm going to check 0, 0. The reason why I like to do that one is because zeros tend to cancel things out. Okay, and things cancel out, they get much less complicated. But if 0 makes it more complicated for you, don't do it. Okay, so I'm going to check a point, and you're going to check it just like we did on that screen before this one. Okay, so here's the original inequality, and I am going to check 0, 0. So that means y is 0, greater than, x is now 0, and now I'm going to subtract 1. Simplify both sides. In this case, there's only 1. So is 0 greater than -1? And that is true. Okay, if it's false, you work with that. True, you work with that. Okay, so this one's true, which means then that this point that we checked needs to be in the part of my graph that I shade. Okay, so this was true, so it needs to be shaded up here so that green dot is included in the shading. And that's absolutely horrible shading, but you get the idea. Okay, so back to canvas. You chose this one and you put in your 2 points. So now you have a dotted line sitting there, but nothing shaded. You check your point, go through your process, and you figure out that this point worked, so I want to shade this side. So then you click somewhere over here, anywhere, as long as it's in this shaded section. Okay, it can even be right there if you want to, anywhere that's above the line in this case. And once you click it, it will shade. Okay, if you click it and you change your mind, just click clear all and draw it again. Okay, but what this means now is this whole section, any point that we choose, even this one clear up here, if I put it in here for y and for x, this will be true. Okay, so the infinite number of points will all work. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, here's a new one. This one has a less than or equal to. So the equal to part, that little equal to line, means it's going to be a solid line when you graph it. Okay, so I'm just going to write this here to remind myself, or we're going to down here at the bottom, we're going to use the solid line when we choose it. Okay, now our steps. We're going to graph it as if it were an equation and then go from there. Okay, so this one I'm going to do this way. I'm going to put a 0 in for x and a 0 in for y and see what I get for the opposite. It's standard form and it's going to work out quite easily. So that's what I'm going to choose. How do I know? A lot of practice, okay? And you'll recognize it here after you've done a few. Okay, so if I let x be 0, I put a 0 in here, this whole term goes to 0. So I'm going to get rid of that one. And now I'm looking at 2y is equal to 8. That's when I recognized that 8 will divide by 2. And so that's how I knew it would work out evenly. Okay, so in this case, I would divide by 2, and I would get y equals 4. And you're doing all of that basically in your head. Okay, so now if I let y equals 0, try it again, y equals 0 now, then divide both sides by 4, and x equals 2. So now I have my 2 points. 0, 4 is up here, so that's your first mouse click, and 2, 0 is over here. That's your second mouse click. And now it should have drawn your straight, solid line in between those two. Okay, so now we need to figure out which side to shade, which means we need to check a point. And 0, 0 is available, so I'm going to check it. So 0, 0. And remember, whoops, this time you put it into the original. Okay, so I'm going to do 4 times 0 plus 2 times 0. Is that less than or equal to 8? Okay, these zeros came from that green point over there. So we have 0 add 0 less than or equal to 8, and that is true. So the green part, or the green dot, has to be in the shaded part. Okay. So you would just click over on the left side of your graph someplace, but I have to shade it. Okay. All right, another one. And this one is incredibly similar to the last one. So I'm going to go a little faster here. So first of all, we're going to graph it as an equation. Okay, so if you want to stop the video for a second and figure out what these values are going to be, go ahead and do that. Okay, so 0 on the x, 4 on the y, negative 2 on the y, 0 on the x. Okay, and is it going to be dotted or solid? Okay, you look at the symbol, and it doesn't have the equal sign, so it's going to be dotted. Make sure you practice doing some of these on paper instead of just on the computer with clicking things, because you have to do it on paper for your exam, okay? So don't rely on the technology for all of it all the time. Okay, now we need to figure out which side to shade. Since 0, 0 is available, I'm going to try it. I always put a dot on the graph that I'm checking, just so you guys know, but you don't need to put that point on the graph. You just need to use that point, or whichever other point you choose on either side. Okay, remember you're going back to the original, and you want to check to see if it's true or not. So we have 0, add 0. Is that greater than 8? And this one is false. So that means this point is not included in the shaded side. It's got to be over here instead. Okay, so if it's false, the dot is not in the shaded section. If it's true, then the dot is in the shaded section. Let me show you that for an example. I'm going to choose a different dot. Let's do this one up here. Okay, so that's negative 3, 3. Okay, so I'm going to check it just like I did the 0, 0. So x was negative 3 and y is 3. So I get 12, add 6. Is that greater than 8? Absolutely it is. That one's true. So that means the point I just checked, negative 3, 3, up here needs to be in the shaded part, which it is. Okay, so you can choose any point you want. I just usually use 0, 0 because it's easy. Okay, now you know the process. Let's do a few weird ones so that you're aware of what they might throw at you. Okay, this one is in no form that we recognize, right? So you can use it as is. You can do a T-chart, or you can put it into a format that you understand. In fact, a fraction is sometimes easy to work with depending on where it is. Okay, so I'm going to move the x term to the other side. I'm solving for y, so it's in y-intercept form. I didn't do anything that needs to flip the inequality sign, so I leave it as is. Okay, so slope-intercept form with a fraction in front of the x is perfect. Okay, so graphing this one won't be too bad at all. Y-intercept is down on the y-axis at negative 2, and from negative 2, you go up 1 and to the right 4. They're both positives, so up and right. Okay, so we're going to go up 1 to the right 4. We end up right there. Okay, it's just going to be a solid or dotted line. This one's going to be a solid line because it has an equal to, right? Okay, so solid line. Click this one, click this, and then you have to wait a minute. And waiting a minute means you have to check a point and see which side to shade. So I'm going to check 0, 0 because I can. However, other points might be just as easy for you. Okay, like in this case, I might want to put a 4 here because the 4's cancel. So totally up to you what you want to do. I'm going to use a 0 though. Okay, so in my head, I am going back to the original. Whoops, I don't want y, I want 0 now. Is that less than or equal to negative 2? 0, add 0. Sure enough, it is. It's true. So that means 0, 0 needs to be in my shaded section. So with your mouse, you click up at the top and it will shade up for you. Okay, so it's really not too hard when you know what you're doing. First day of learning this, you didn't know what you were doing, so it's going to get better every time. Okay, so if it's not in a format that you know, then change it to one that you know and graph it from there. Okay, next one. This one is just a little awkward because of one thing. If you are graphing this using your intercepts, put a 0 in for x, you get a 0 for y. Put a 0 in for y, you get a 0 for x. So that is not helpful in the slightest. Okay, so you get 1 point, and from there you don't know where to go. All right, so what I would do in this one instead is graph it using slope-intercept form, which just means put a slope-intercept at the end, which will be 0. Okay, so this is your b, and this is your m. So for your slope, you're going to go up 1 because it's positive, and to the right 4 since it's also positive, but you're going to start at 0 because of this. Y-intercept is 0, and we knew that from doing our intercepts before, but now we're going to go up 1 and over 4. And here's our next dot. Okay, how am I connecting them? I'm going to use a dotted line, right? Okay, now this one throws you off a little bit too because I cannot substitute 0, 0. It won't help me tell which side of the graph to shade. So I'm going to choose a completely different number, or a point, sorry, and I want to use one that will help me out over here with my fraction. So I want my x value to be divisible by 4, so it will cancel. So if x value is 4, I could choose any of these up here or any of these down here. Okay, I'm just going to choose this one. So for -1, negatives don't bother me, but if they do bother you, then use one up in the first quadrant instead. And remember, we are going back to our original, and now we're substituting in a 0 for y and a 0 for x. Oh, no, we're not, because that one wouldn't help me, right? I'm going to do y is -1 and x is 4. So the 4's cancel. What I have left is -1 greater than 1, and it is not. That's false, which means the point we just tried is not in the shaded section, and I have to shade the other side. Two more kind of weird ones, but they're not that hard when you know what you're doing, and then we're done. Okay, so this one, if you remember, because all I have is the x in my graph, your graph will only cross the x-axis. Okay, so we're going to be graphing x equals -3 with a solid line, right? Because it has an equal to in our original inequality. So x equals -3 is over here, okay? No matter what y is, x has to equal -3. Okay, so we're going to go to -3 and stay there. -3 and go up 1. -3, go up 4. -3, go down 5. Whatever. But x has to be -3. Okay, so your graph with a solid line, pretend that's actually on the line. And it was solid line because of the equal sign. That's what our graph looks like. Okay, there is no y, so it will never cross the y-axis. Okay, it's a greater than. So with these, it's easier because it's not on an angle. So which side of a vertical line would you assume means bigger numbers over here, right? If you want to try a 0, 0 or any other point just to be safe, when you substitute it into your original and you're checking a full point, all you have is one value that gets substituted. So what this is saying is choose all of the points so that the one value is bigger than 3, or negative 3 in this case. But it does end up being to the right of a horizontal line because, or a vertical line, sorry, because everything to the right is bigger. Everything to the left would be smaller. Okay, so last one. You probably knew this was coming. Now we know that there's only a y value of negative 4. Okay, y value of negative 4 is down on the y-axis at negative 4. There is no x, so it can't cross the x-axis. Every point on the line on the line, y has to equal negative 4. So no matter how many points you choose to graph, every one of the y values has to equal negative 4. Choose anything you want. Okay? So 0, negative 4, 1, negative 4, negative 5, negative 4. They all have to have a negative 4. This one is also a solid line because it has an equal to in our original. And now it's asking for numbers greater than, y values greater than negative 4. Greater than is always up, right? So this one is going to shade above it, okay? Yeah, this isn't easy stuff, guys. It's really quite complicated. So if you are even slightly confused, you're normal, okay? Please let me know if you have any questions. If you don't understand any part of this, please let me know, okay? All right. Otherwise, you've got this.